Welcome to the Lead Pedal Podcast with your host, Bruce Outridge, where he talks all things trucking. Now let's get rolling.
Oh, yeah, let's talk some stuff trucking, don't you think? Hey, welcome everybody to the show. I'm your host, Bruce Outridge. Today we're going to be talking about how to, as an employee or as a driver, that if you see something unsafe, what do you do about it? A lot of people don't do anything about it, and that causes even bigger problems. So we're going to be talking with Brian Filko today, and he's got a book out called Make Safety Happen. We're going to talk a little bit about his book later on, but right before that, we're going to find out exactly what should you be doing as far as getting your, saying something if you see something unsafe and having that safety culture throughout the company. It's very hard to get driver buy-in in this world, but we all need to do it. And you know, because if you've watched any of the statistics about trucking, you know that this is a really important thing. There's people not doing what they're supposed to be doing. It's causing havoc on the roads, and we all need to get our crap together, if you want to say it that way. Now, who is Brian? Brian's the former CEO of Jetco Delivery. He's an EVP of Risk Resources at Acrisure and nationally recognized speaker on leadership, safety culture, and operational performance. He's written the book Make Safety Happen, and we're going to be talking about all of that as we do. Now, this is part one of part two, because we're going to be talking about how you can get all your teams to work together in part two. But this is part one of the conversation with Brian Filko. Let's get on with it. Before we do that, though, let me tell you a little bit about Rosedale Transport. They have a safety culture for sure. They have 15 terminals across North America, and they have opportunities in local, regional, highway, and owner-operator. If you want to work for a fleet that is stable, been around 50 years, has a great safety culture, their drivers love it, the team loves it, and they've been going for a long time, so you know you're working at a stable company, then Rosedale Transport is where you want to look. Go to rosedalegroup.com and check out their careers page for the current opportunities, and I tell you, you will not be disappointed. Head office is in Mississauga, Ontario, but they have terminals close to you, so check that out there. All right, let's get on to our interview today with Mr. Brian Filko. We're going to talk about safety and, well, how to get your buy-in as a driver. This is an important one today, folks. 2026 has not been getting any safer for truckers. It's been getting worse. Let's get on with the show, shall we? Here we go.
Be sure to share the podcast on your favorite social media channels.
All right, everybody, on the line, I've got Brian Filko, and he's got a book coming out called Making Safety Happen. We're going to be talking about that today. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the invitation, Bruce.
Yeah. So we were talking off air. You mentioned you have run trucking companies. Tell us a little bit about how you got into the transportation industry. I always like to start there so we can all kind of know, does this person know their stuff or not? I'm sure you do. That's not the question. But just tell us what your role is today in trucking, and then we'll go back to how you got started in the industry.
Sure. Well, I mean, today's role, I do work in kind of the risk advisory space. So helping companies, manage risk, operation risk, safety risk. But for years, for about 15 years, I owned and grew and sold a trucking company based in Houston called Jetco Delivery. And before that, my background was in waste and recycling. So still a lot of trucking, right? But moving from kind of a captive model where your fleet is servicing your recycling or your waste to a for-hire trucking business. So I've been around, trucks and wheels for a good long time.
Where are you based now? Are you still in Houston?
I am.
Oh, I love Houston. I used to run a lot of Houston. I'm based up in Toronto, Canada, but you would probably know our company. I'm surprised we haven't crossed paths. Nalco is a company I used to work for, and they were water treatment. I'm sure you must have seen them in your line of work around Houston, because they're big in Sugar Land and all that.
Absolutely. I know the name. Yeah. And the company, my company, we actually sold it to a Montreal-based company who has operations in Toronto. So, yeah.
Okay, all right. So we're worldwide right now, and at the time we're speaking this, FIFA's on, so we could just say congratulations. I think you guys did really well in your game yesterday, and we did pretty well in our game yesterday as well.
Yes.
We're all on a move. That's all the soccer we're going to talk today, Brian. I throw that out because we're in there. Okay, so you're in safety, and so you must be busy because there's a lot of safety issues in the transportation industry today. A lot of changes. What made you focus on that? Has that just always been your career path, or did you decide that, we've seen enough crashes, we need to do something here? Or?
Yeah, Probably a mix. In other words, look, safety's always been important, don't get
Yeah.
me wrong, but I think through the evolution of my career, I came to see it more, less of a department, less of a compliance function, and more of a way of life. More that, people talk about safety culture. Well, the reality is, what I've learned is there really is no such thing as a safety culture,
Right.
because your safety culture is nothing more than your safety performance is nothing more than a reflection of your operational and your organizational health. So our focus on safety was it was a byproduct of us doing everything else right. In other words, if we were treating our team right, if we were aligned, if we were communicating right, if we had our values in place, good safety performance was an outcome of that. And if I walked into any company and asked who's responsible for safety, my bet is that half would say the safety manager, the safety department, the other half would say I am or we all are. And there's only one right answer there, which is the I am or we all are. Um, and so that changed how we led our company. It changed our focus. And as we focus more on safety organically like that, right? As the inputs and less on as the outputs, you give me a metric, and I can show you improvement, whether it was customer satisfaction, employee retention, and employee satisfaction, which to me is the key to everything. Insurance cost profitability. Safety truly is at the foundation of healthy, profitable companies. It's not some project or some department that sits over there on the sidelines.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because we just had this at our. I'm part of a fleet safety council up here in Canada, and we just had this at our seminar talking about culture and how it goes from the top down. And it's funny you say that because a lot of people, and I think in trucking, they still look at it as okay, it's a checkbox. We got to have safety because compliance is part of that. But as soon as money's tight, they go, we stop investing in safety. And it's kind of that thing. It's got to be part of your company, like you're saying. It's got to be kind of so that people don't even realize, that's the way it's going to work. There's no other option but to be safe, right?
Yeah, yeah, and money does get tight. I mean, the trucking industry has I think it's coming out very nicely, but it's been in a 3-year downturn. And during that period, sure, it's easy to defer maintenance, right? But every dollar you save on deferred maintenance, whether you're a multi-fleet operation or a one truck owner operator, every dollar you try and save today will bite you many times over down the road. So even when money is tight, maybe other things have to get cut. I get that. I
Yeah.
mean, money doesn't grow on trees, but safety can't be compromised. Safety has to be if we can't, our mantra was, look, if we can't do it safely, we're not going to do it. And that means if a truck's not ready, we're not going to rush it out of the shop.
Right, right, right. What's the biggest challenge you're seeing with? Let's talk about employees. That might be truck drivers, mechanics, staff in the office, wherever they might be. What's the biggest challenge you find with employees? Is there a challenge where, do I do it safely? This is easier. This is faster. If someone has to, hopefully they don't have to choose. But if they're thinking there's an easier way to do this, but it's not the safest way, because sometimes the safest way has a few extra steps we're not planning on. What's the biggest challenge you see when you're trying to get that safety culture through to your employees? Are there any spots where it always seems to be a problem? Is it policy or anything like that?
Well, I think I think you hit on one of them, which is respect for process. I mean, most think about it this way, okay, Bruce? Most procedures are there for a reason. They're probably written in blood. I mean, a lot of policies come about because we learn in continuous improvement. So, when you're busy, I get it. Shortcuts are tempting. But the biggest problem with shortcuts is that they work until they stop working. And so, they exist for a reason. So safety requires unconditional respect for process. And I know it's easy to think about speeding, or it's easy to think about bypassing, that pre-trip, that post-trip because we're in a rush. But even if nothing happens, if you do it, that doesn't make it safe. It means you're lucky.
Yeah.
And so that's one area, is respect for process. But there's another area that I don't think it's focused on enough, and I think it's really important. if I look at all the safety issues I've seen, right, crashes, you name it, I think a small minority of them, a small minority is the result of deliberate, negligent conduct.
Okay.
I think most are innocent mistakes.
Yeah.
We're trying to do the right thing, you know what, we didn't. And so what I think we have to look at is a couple of things. First of all, as employers, we have to look at the the damage that a punish first culture can do, right? In other words, if somebody's operating recklessly, well, then do what you got to do. I get that. But if you agree with what I'm saying, which is most safety failures are somebody who's trying to do the right thing and the wrong thing happened, you still have to document it, but it's a coaching moment. It's like, let's figure this out together, and then let's communicate to everybody else what happened so it doesn't happen again. It's about prevention. And so sometimes it's kind of that whodunit, we're gonna write you up mentality, I think does more harm than good. The other thing from the driver's standpoint is there's a concept called self-induced pressure. When we think about production pressure, we think often about, the dispatcher, the manager putting too much pressure on the driver, and then the driver rushes, as you said, and cuts corners. I get that. We need to control that. But self-induced pressure doesn't get enough airplay. It's the pressure that we put on ourselves. And the story that I'll tell that I think brings it to light is that the helicopter crash that killed Kobe Bryant and his passengers, that was a helicopter that flew from Orange County, California to LA. And everybody knew LA had fog that day. Well, it was not the helicopter company telling the pilot, you have to go. It was the pilot deciding that he could go. He could go because this guy was a 16-year pilot. He was kind of one of the most respected pilots in Orange County. He was the only pilot that Kobe would allow to fly his family unaccompanied. So this pilot had an elevated sense of mission. And does that sound familiar? I mean, a lot of us have that.
Yeah, but sorry, Brian. But in the meantime, though, isn't that same pilot with that experience supposed to be able to say, like you said, everybody knows there was fog that day, that this is not going to be we should not do this. How come we didn't go the other way than trying to make that go?
Well, sure. I mean, looking back, of course, but how many times do any of us say, I've been doing this a long time. Don't worry. I got this. I can do this. I mean, to me, it's almost a natural thing that if we have enough experience, we start to numb ourselves a little bit to the risk or start to kind of overestimate, that I can do this. I'm a pro. I've been doing this a long time. And I think that trend is true of employees, professionals in any people in any profession. Yeah. But in a safety sensitive profession, you need to call that time out on yourself. You need that second set of eyes because it's just too easy to kind of say, I've done this 100 times, don't worry about it. And that's when bad things happen. So sure, in retrospect, the pilot should have said, no, I'm not going. It's my decision, I'm not going. But the fact that the decision was left up to him, as so many safety critical decisions are left up to the people in charge, it should be a lesson that nothing is worth that risk, and you've really got to take a time out. And I think it's especially true when you've been doing something a long time.
I talk a lot about complacency, and I find it happens about every 5 years. So the ones over 10 years are most critical to that because they've been doing it so long and are usually so experienced. But one thing you mentioned there that I think is really something a lot of truck drivers struggle with is that we're told to go. Dispatch says, go get, and I've gone down the road and there's a snow and I go, why are we even here? Like, this is just silly that I even left. But sometimes you don't feel you have the power as I know there's if the job is unsafe to go, but our job is also probably unsafe 90% of the time if you're a long haul truck driver. So, when do you, how, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, if that helicopter pilot had said no, if I'm the truck driver who said no, what is my backup if everybody else is telling me go? Like dispatch saw the same weather report. They didn't say, well, maybe we'll hold the truck back. The sales didn't call the customer to say it's really bad here. At what point? Some companies have that in place now. A lot of companies don't. What should that driver, helicopter pilot be doing or trying? How do you back yourself up when you're the only one saying, "I don't think this is safe"?
Um, Look, my bias on this is that the driver is the captain of the ship,
Right.
and that, um, you're trusting your drivers to use good judgment. So I don't think there's a substitute for that. So if if I say if I'm in the office and I say you have to go, and you're looking at the weather and saying I'm driving right into an ice storm, um, I have to respect your decision to call a timeout. I mean, hopefully I would tell you not to go, right? But if but if I said go and you said no, it's not safe, then the employer, the trucking company has to respect the that decision. And if other people go and they allow it, it is what it is, right? I don't know that you can control that, but it's a risk I wouldn't take. I mean, look, in Houston, we would have ice storms and we would just shut down. Other companies would run and run it off the road. I mean, our drivers in Houston, a lot of them just weren't experienced in that kind of weather. So it's situational. We need to make sure that our drivers, just because you can drive doesn't mean you can drive anywhere. Just because you can drive, that doesn't mean you can drive in the mountains of Colorado unless you're experienced with it. So it's situational. You've got to know where your drivers are going and make sure they're trained for the specific risks at hand. But at the end of the day, to your point, is if it's not safe, there's no other option in my mind than to call a timeout. And if somebody kind of ridicules you for that, or says, "Well, geez, you shouldn't have done that," um, you sort of have to, you can listen and say, "Okay, did I make a mistake?" And right, we always could make a mistake in judgment, but chances are you didn't. And I would always err on the side of, is that load really more important than my life or the health and life of somebody that I'm driving next to? And the answer is no.
Yeah, yeah. I used to have I drove for 25 years. I stopped driving about 20 years ago, but I had rules for myself, and if I couldn't, if it was so white knuckling that we could not move, I'm off the road. If it's fog, I'm off the road. If it's ice, I'm off the road. Heavy snow,
Yeah.
I'm okay with. I'm a pretty good in snow. I'm Canadian, born Canadian. Snow's not new. So there's some situations where I'm fairly comfortable, and there's other situations where that's it for me. Like I'm not even messing with that black ice, fog, anything like that. So I guess really it's up to the driver to have a set of rules for themselves to say, here's a situation where I'm not going, or here's one where I feel comfortable enough, but we'll monitor that kind of thing, right? So that it's not. How do you get the buy-in from the employees on the safe culture? Let's get back to that safety mindset that we've got coming on. Sometimes it's the employees that want to be safe, and management is going, no, that's too much money, or we're not doing that, or whatever. And sometimes it's the opposite, where it's management and trying to say everybody we need to be safe, and the employers are going, the last thing I need is another point on my inspection. I'm barely doing the ones now, right? So, what is there a way to get people buy-in? Does it take a certain amount of time? Is it a lot of people put in these safety safety awards and all that kind of stuff with their company? Does that stuff work? What have you found that works pretty well over the years to get employee buy-in?
I really think that, excuse me, I really think first and foremost, it comes down to treatment and trust. I mean, if your culture is healthy, and you're treating your employees the right way, and you're transparent about changes that you need to make, or things you're doing, and they trust you and you trust each other, then I think buy-in is really easy. But what I've seen is that lack of trust, um, suspicion. What are they up to? That can really get in the way of the buy-in. I think the awards and all of that are nice, but it's icing on the cake. I mean, I would rather I would rather work at a company that just treats people right, that puts safety first in what they do, not what they say. That their actions speak louder than their words.
Right.
Than have something that's kind of on quicksand, but once a year we have an award ceremony. So I think the awards, safety bonuses, I think they've got all a really important role in the ecosystem. but only if the foundation is there. If the foundation's not there, they almost destroy credibility because everybody knows that 364 days a year we don't mean it, and one day a year we do this. So I look for the substance, and if I was applying for a job, um, I'd want to talk to other drivers, I want to talk to folks in the shop. I'd want to know how they're treated. I'd have some specific questions, but I believe that the employee is interviewing the employer as much as the other way around. And find a home that, we're going back into a tight capacity for drivers now, right? So what happens during tight capacity? Everybody puts out these signing bonuses, and you jump at a signing bonus, and then you wind up jumping into a culture that's not so good. So you really need to interview and assess where you're going. And again, to me, if there's not a commitment to get you home to your family, if that's not first and foremost, then I'm not sure what's more important.
Well, you would be. I don't have to tell you because you've been in this industry as long as I have. So I'm sure you know that not everybody operates that way. We wish they would, but they certainly don't for sure.
Well, I know the real world on that. But what I'm telling you is that if you find those companies that do that, you're going to find companies with more stable performance, more loyal customers, and I'm not going to get into the details, but last month there was a major U.S. Supreme Court case. It was called Montgomery versus C.H. Robinson. And just in a nutshell, it's revolutionizing, in my mind, how brokers and shippers are going to vet their truckers. And for a long time, the best brokers and the best shippers did vet truckers for safety. Now, watch that explode. Watch that infiltrate everywhere because this Robinson case is impacting insurance decisions. It's impacting shipper decisions. So, safety always gave the best companies and therefore the drivers working for them a competitive advantage. Watch that accelerate after last month's Supreme Court ruling. Safety, it's the right thing to do. We all know that, but it's also really, really good business.
Yeah, yeah, and I can be, you can be transferred over because I'm not an unsafe driver, but I was one of those drivers. I've worked for a couple companies where it's get it done at any cost, and then I moved into companies where it was safety. Don't even think about trying that. And now my wife calls me Mr. Safety, so you can be transferred over after enough talking, right?
Look, Bruce, every one of us is a work in process, right? Where we were 10 years ago. Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of drivers, work with a lot of drivers who, the two sets of logbooks, all that at one point in their career. I get that. And that's how a lot of them were brought in. That's how things were done. I get that. But we got to focus on today. We got to focus on the future. And as you just said, that some of the drivers that lived in that era are also, in my experience, were our best safety advocates because they know the risks they were taking that they shouldn't have taken. And now they're bringing others along. So what it was, that's fine. What we care about is today and tomorrow, and a chance to kind of raise the bar on each of us, whether, again, we have operating one truck, we're working for a fleet, whatever it is, we can all raise the bar because, again, it's just good business.
Your book is your book out now? Making Safety Happen. Is it relaunched, published, or is you just starting, or where are you for that?
It's out. It came out last week.
Oh, okay. Well,
and I'm really excited about it. It came out in hardcover, in ebook format, and in audiobook format. So people can kind of consume it however they want. But yeah, the book is really divided into 4 or 5 parts, right? First, we got to change how we think about safety if we want to change the outcome. Then we talk about leadership. And when I talk about leadership, let's be real clear. I'm talking about leaders at every level. This isn't just about executives. Everybody has a role to play as a leader. Then we talk about employee engagement, respect for process, and then we end with accountability and resilience. And when we talk about accountability, what I really hit is, sure, we need to look at the individual factors, the person whose hands were on the wheel, but we have to remember that an organization can cause a crash too. Yes, so to me, accountability has to be individual, and organizational. And a lot of times we stop the inquiry at the individual level, and then we miss the underlying contributors that really helped cause that incident. So we, it's all meant to be practical, hands-on advice, real-world stuff. I'm not big on theory, and ideas that whether you're an individual driver or whether you're a multi-unit employer, you can take them. Not one size fits all. Pick the ones, make them your own, and it will help you raise the bar. That's my goal.
Yeah, is the book written? I've written a few books myself, and it's every book has been different that I've written. Is yours written kind of in story form? Is it kind of like a practical book where they could, here's a chapter, here's a checklist? How's the book laid out? Kind of give us the idea of the inside contents there.
It's written in how-to form, so kind of guidebook form, but it's full of stories. So it's not, it can't just be like, here's kind of a boring process manual, but it's focused on kind of, here's the idea, here's how we bring it to life, and then every chapter ends with just what you said, a checklist. So even you can kind of just take that checklist and use that. So it's meant to be really accessible. And the other thing is, I wrote the book the way I read, which is you don't have to read the book chapter to chapter, cover to cover. You read the table of contents and say, this is interesting to me. This is kind of where I am now. The book is meant to meet people where they're at. It's not meant to be an academic work or a treatise. But I think the ending checklists in every chapter, I think the stories, like I'll give you an example. I talk about close calls and near misses and how a close call or a near miss really is basically the same thing as a crash. You just got lucky. There was no bad outcome. And then the story I'll tell is, if remember in January of 2025, there was that horrible crash over the Potomac River involving an American Eagle plane and a military helicopter that was flying too low. Now, what if I told you that from 2011 to the date of the crash, that same set of facts presented itself over 80 times?
Wow.
Right? It's just there was no crash. And so I'll use stories like that just to make the point is that, near misses, all they mean is that you got lucky. It had all the elements of that crash, of that incident, other than the outcome. So, and then we'll tell stories like the one I just did, and then we'll end that chapter with, okay, now here's what we do about it. That's kind of the structure of the book.
Yeah, and that's, it's funny you say that, because I think that's the whole idea of the basics for FMCSA. That's when they started that, right? Was to kind of give you this point system so you can see whether you're getting better or worse, or are you about to be in a real problem area.
Exactly. And the basics, when people review those basics, you really got to use some judgment on them. Like, first of all, I'm sure that all of your drivers, your audience knows they've all got a PSP score, right? You've probably been through that with them.
Yep.
So, first of all, that PSP score is weighted heavily in a lot of employment decisions. So you got to manage that as the professional driver. But the basics, it's like I can look at a company, let's say their hours of service scores are not good. Well, I have to do another look. Are they running illegally? Or are there a lot of form and manner problems? And in a lot of cases, you just have form and manner problems that are driving your score up. You're generally running fine, but yet an outsider is going to see a FMCS alert on hours of service, and what are they going to conclude? They're going to conclude that you're running hot.
Yeah.
And in a lot of these companies, they're really not. But they've got to get the basics in order, the compliance in order. Otherwise, it's going to give a bad appearance. And those basics are going to be under a microscope, I think, even more in the future because of the Supreme Court case I mentioned earlier. It's really going to change the game in how carefully truckers are selected.
I thought that was the reason for ELDs, but we'll leave that for another time, because I thought was to take away all that form and manner stuff, so you didn't have to worry about that, right? That was, I believe, the idea of it.
Yeah, well, I think it helped, but it's still there. It's still there big time.
Where can people get your book, Brian? And are you on? Do you do speaking? Or is that part of the thing, or did you wrote the book just to kind of be a guide to people? Let us know where we could follow you, how they would hire you if you're out to speaking and stuff.
The real reason for the book was legacy. It was because I think I've learned a lot of it the hard way.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to leave it as a legacy for people that they can use for many years. I can be reached. My address is Brianfilco.com, BrianFielkow.com. The book itself is available on all the big sellers, Amazon, Apple, Barnes and Noble, all the online outlets. And like I said before, ebook, audiobook, and hardcover. And so, I mean, I hope people will read it, but it's meant to be a conversation too. So reach out if you want to discuss anything further. Reach out. If there's any way I can be of service, I certainly do some presentations. But again, the idea behind the book is it's going to stand on its own. The book is not meant to be kind of a marketing tool for something else. It's meant to really be something you can use and hopefully be. This is the second safety book I've written. I co-wrote a book called Leading People Safely 10 years ago.
Okay.
And that book created so much conversation and it created so much great dialogue. That's what I hope we accomplish here 10 years later.
That's great. Well, thank you very much for that. Leave us with a parting safety message. What is your core message you'd like to leave with everybody before we go? It's been great having you on. So let us know, and I'm going to encourage people to get the book. I will put it in the show notes. But give us a safety tip that we should leave with for 2026 here. Where do we go?
Well, this is incumbent on every employer, every individual driver. If you see a sign on the wall that says safety is our number one priority, tear it down. Yeah. Because priorities shift. Priorities compete with each other. Safety can't be a priority because that means something like a hot load could compete with safety.
Right.
Safety has to be a non-negotiable core value, meaning values don't change. If integrity is a value, if respect is a value, I don't care if we're having a good day or a bad day, that doesn't change. That's where safety has to be in how you show up for work and how you conduct yourself professionally. Safety has to be a non-negotiable core value, meaning that I don't care what the pressure is. We'll figure that out. You don't compromise safety. Safety is not a priority. It's a core value.
That's a perfect message for 2026. Brian, thank you so much. You've been a wealth of information here. I'm going to encourage people to get the book, and thank you for your time today. It's been great, and all the best for 2026 with the book.
Thank you.
Thank you, buddy. All right. Wasn't that a great interview with Brian? Check that out for sure. If you want to get safety going in your operation, you got to have buy-in from everybody. And I know you're going to love his book, Make Safety Happen. Go to brianfilco.com. I'll put a link in the show notes for you, and just look for Make Safety Happen. You get the book there for sure. And make sure you join us next time as we talk about how to get everybody involved in this. Before we go, though, let me tell you a little bit about a place that can get you started in safety right away. That's our friends over at Compliance Mentors. Man, all you got to do is you phone them up, and here's the best way to start. Get them to do an audit on your operation right now. Let you know what you need to work on. You're probably doing well in some areas, but maybe you're falling down in others. Get that whole thing so everybody has. Talk with your team. Get the buy-in. Get them to help you with the training if that's what's needed. Get them to help you keep score and give you some consulting services. And I know you're going to be so happy with them that you're going to get this done. They've got people all across the country, so it doesn't matter whether you're here in Ontario or out in BC. They can help you. So how do you find out more? Go to compliancementorswithaz.com. compliancementorswithaz.com. Make sure you tell them that we sent you. Also, if you're looking for proper training, because that's the foundation to any safe career in trucking, you got to go to our friends over at Ontario Truck Driving School. This school has not only been around since 1978, they're professional in everything they do, but they support our industry. You see them at events, you see them at associations, you see them being involved, and that's because they want to be leaders in our association. You don't see the other schools who are just taking your money and not giving you proper training, trying to support the industry because they know they'd be called out. So why not just go right to the best, get yourself a good, stable career in trucking, and start with Ontario Truck Driving School. Go to otds.com to learn all about their heavy equipment and truck driving courses, and I know you're going to love these guys. We do. I've been working with them for over a decade now, and I can tell you, they are a solid group. So, okay. All right. So, hey, make sure you join us for the next episode with Brian Filco as we continue our discussion on how to get everybody working safe at the workplace, and make sure you get his book, Make Safety Happen. Subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on, and we will catch you later. later, my friends. Be good out there. Be safe. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. That means you're going to be even safer.
This has been another episode of the Lead Pedal Podcast. For more information or to subscribe to the podcast, visit theleadpedalpodcast.com and be sure to follow the podcast on Facebook and Twitter.